All right, everybody, I think we will make a start. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our live stream Q&A for material science. We've got some of our current students here who are going to answer all of your questions. My name is Helena, and I'm the Access and Outreach Manager for the Department of Materials at the University of Oxford, and I'll be sort of hosting this event. And I also studied at Oxford myself as an undergraduate, so I might be able to help answer a few questions as well. So, without further ado, I will let our panel introduce themselves. If you want to turn your cameras and microphones on, and you guys watching can all get thinking of your questions and pop them in the Slido box at the top of the Material Science Open Day page. If you're watching this on YouTube, there's a link in the description that you can click on. So I will hand over to Anthony to introduce himself first.
Hi everyone, I'm Anthony. I've just finished the 4-year undergraduate course in material science and I'm staying on to do a DPhil, a PhD. So I'll be starting my PhD in 2 weeks' time. I went to St. Catherine's College and yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions today.
Hi everyone, I'm Brad. I did the 4-year undergrad at Oxford as well, and I'm a year into my PhD now, so I stayed on. Same as Anthony. I did my undergrad at Teddy Hall and I'm doing my postgrad at St Anne's, and yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Hi everyone, I'm Charlotte and I am a week into my 4th year studying material science and I'm at Mansfield College.
Brilliant. So if you are watching, make sure you ask all your questions, like I say, in the Slido box at the top of the page. We haven't had any come in yet, so get thinking if you are watching. And in the meantime, I guess we will kick off with a quick question. What made you choose material science? So why material science? And what do you enjoy about it? So Charlotte, do you want to kick things off?
Yeah, so when I was at school, I was thinking to start with that I wanted to do engineering, and then I was also thinking about natural sciences courses, and I found that material science sort of perfectly encompassed a bit of physics, a bit of chemistry, a bit of engineering, and then also using lots of math skills. That's what I thought when I applied, and I feel like that's a pretty accurate representation of what it is. I think my favorite part of the course is probably we do quite a lot of labs, sort of every other week in 2nd and 1st year. We do 2 to 3 afternoons of labs, and they're always really fun. It's a chance to work with other people and apply what we've been learning in lectures in a really hands-on way, with lots of really, really cool equipment, and you also get lots of help through it. So that's always nice as well.
Brilliant. Does anyone else want to chip in on why they decided to do materials? Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, so I completely agree with Charlotte. I think that I really wanted a course that was quite practical as well as theoretical. I was struggling at school when I was thinking about what subject to apply for between engineering, physics. I was thinking in that kind of area, but I wasn't massively excited about either of those. And then I was really lucky. Someone came to my school and did a talk about. She was a material science researcher at the university, and she came and did a talk, and I didn't realize it was a subject before that, and then I realized it was a subject, and it was the perfect overlap for me about the bits of engineering and the bits of physics that I was really interested in, and knew straight away from that was the bit that was what I wanted to do. Yeah.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Because material science isn't taught as its own subject in school. A lot of people don't realize that it exists and what it actually is. So yeah, that's a really good point. Anthony, do you want to talk?
Yeah, sure. I think for me, so similar to Brad, I definitely didn't know what material science was. Like by year 11, so 16 years old, I just never heard of it until I went to a lecture on nanotechnology. So it was a guy who used to work at NASA, and he was talking a lot about nanotechnology and how its applications within material science. And I was like, wow, this sounds amazing. Like nanotech, NASA, how this is impacting like rockets, things like that. I was like, that course seems super amazing. So that was sort of my introduction into the course. And it was definitely cool to finally learn a bit more about nanotechnology in the actual material science undergraduate degree too as well. So for me, that was probably what inspired me the most to pick it. Like it's direct links to nanotechnology. And I guess going back to what I've probably found most enjoyable, I would probably say two things. So first thing I'd say is probably the fourth year. So the fourth year is one in which it's a research project entirely dedicated towards you sort of like the entire year, no exams. It's just you focused on executing a research question and sort of like going from taking it almost like a baby from start to finish. And it was really cool to be able to be like, wow, at the end of this, I produced this thesis, which at the beginning of it, I didn't think I'd be able to do, but then I was able to finish and do quite well in it. So I think for me, that was a really enjoyable part, sort of like carrying your own research project from start to finish. And second thing, another quick plug is to the, in the second year, we had the opportunity to go to an industrial visit to an international country. And I was able to be like the student tour coordinator for it. So I planned the trip for the material science department to go to Singapore for 12 days, which was super amazing because I'm pretty sure no other STEM subject at Oxford can get the opportunity to do anything like that. So if you're looking to go abroad, Singapore, we've gone to China before, we've gone to America, we've gone to Poland, definitely look out for material science.
Brilliant. Yeah, that's a really nice plug for the sort of international collaborations that we have going on as well. Fantastic. And am I right in thinking that you've carried on sort of your research project for your PhD as well?
Yeah, so to be honest, it's quite interesting because if you asked me about 18 months ago, did you think you'd ever apply to do a PhD or DPhil? I'd be like, no chance. Like, even though I enjoyed the course, I just didn't think I'd stay within the course, but I just really enjoyed my fourth year to the point that I applied to do a PhD within the same research group that did my project. So like now, when I begin in 2 weeks' time, it's something slightly different, but within the same sort of field of research. And it's using something called an atom probe, which another plug to the materials department, is this like really, really expensive, really, really like super cool microscope, I would say, which allows you to see at like the atomic level. And here at Oxford, we have 3 of them, which is really cool as well. Sort of being able to have access to an equipment that I used to be able to say that Oxford's the only place in the whole world, the only place in the UK, which has an atom probe. But Imperial now has one, but you know, we don't talk about that too much.
Awesome. Nice little plug for Oxford materials there. Excellent. So one of the questions that was quite common this morning was people asking for advice for the PAT. So the PAT is the admissions test. So it's the physics aptitude test that everyone who applies to study material science as well as physics and engineering at Oxford has to sit. So we've all sat it. Does anyone want to offer any advice that they might have for someone who will have to sit it maybe this coming November?
Yeah, I think my advice would be to make sure that you kind of cover all the content because it does overlap quite a lot with kind of what A-level content, physics A-level content might be or other similar qualifications. But because it's sat earlier in the year to your A-levels, there might be content that your teachers were planning on teaching a bit later. So just make sure that you've identified what the topics are that could come up. Maybe read ahead in the textbooks that you've got from school and things like that. Use other resources to make sure you've covered everything so that you don't have anything left out. You make sure you can answer all the questions.
Yeah, excellent. Check the syllabus and teach yourself if you haven't quite covered it yet. Brilliant advice. Charlotte, go ahead.
I would say that doing the PAT is like the first test of what doing a university exam is like, in that there's not just one right answer. There are often lots of different right answers, apart from the multiple choice. But for like the longer questions, there'll be more than one way to approach it. And it won't be like the exams you're probably doing at the moment in school, where there'll be a mark scheme and it will be like, you get 1 mark for doing this, 1 mark for doing this. It's much more open than that. So it's the kind of thing where even if you don't have a full answer, it's definitely worth just writing down what you think, giving it a go, trying it in a couple of different ways. And also in a similar way to university exams, it's not like at school where you want to be aiming to get everything right. It's the kind of exam where if you can get half of it right, that's great. Like you can look at the past statistics on like how well people tend to do in it, but the averages will be a lot lower for the PAT compared to like physics or maths A-level. So it's kind of thing, you don't want to get too down on yourself if you are finding it difficult, because everyone's finding it difficult. That's what it's meant to be like. Yeah, and I found that was a big like mindset change for doing the PAT and then also like arriving at Oxford and doing our first sets of exams where your sort of like expectation of how well you're meant to be doing in terms of like the raw percentage really does have to shift a little bit.
Yeah, that is a really good point. So thanks for bringing that up. Anthony, do you want to add to that?
Oh yeah, I can't stress what Charlotte said enough, that I'm pretty sure all of us walked out of the pat feeling like, oh my gosh, that was the worst exam of my life. Kill me now. Oh my gosh, I just don't want to do anything. But like, it really is something to not beat yourself up on, because again, as Charlotte said, write down the things that you do know. If it's an equation which you think is relevant, do write it down. Sometimes that's a good starting point. And something I would also recommend with the pat is do practice talking through your solutions out loud, because this can be something useful for if you have the opportunity to come for an interview. The concept of talking through a pat question is something that familiarizes yourself with the idea of, okay, how can I communicate this in a way that makes sense, that's concise, that still articulates my thought process? And I think it's a skill which will prove its worth at university, at the interview, and it's something which you can start now as part of your preparation.
That is brilliant. Yeah, brilliant advice, and hopefully very helpful for interviews as well. Brad, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think what Anthony and Charlotte said, it's something you need to not get yourself down about. It is pretty tough. I also think it's quite, the style of questions will be so different to exams you'll have tried. I think often you can sit down in a GCSE or A-level exam and you read a question and you kind of know what you're going to do to get to the answer. And I think sometimes with PAT questions, the longer questions, you have to you don't really know how you're going to finally get to the answer. You just have to try something and it will get you a little bit closer to an answer, and then you go from there. So really do a bit of perseverance through the exam is really necessary to just try and get through it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And also sort of pacing yourself throughout the exam, because it's a pretty long exam. I think it's still quite long and quite involved. So having to think about how you're going to manage your time through that as well to maximize the number of marks that you can get. I know I definitely did the classic thing of if I couldn't figure out how to solve it straight away, right, move on to the next one. We can always come back to that. So that's also good advice there. And then, yeah, just generally past papers, you can't go wrong with just practicing past papers. Practice anything that involves problem solving, because like we've all said, it's very different types of questions to A-level questions. They'll be a bit more involved, a bit more open-ended almost. So practice problem solving questions. The physics Olympiad is a good source of practice questions for that. Maths challenge, chemistry Olympiad, all of those sort of competitions. You don't even have to sit the competitions, just look at, again, at past papers and the mark schemes for those. And isaacphysics.org as well is a very good resource for practice questions for the PAT. Brilliant. So still waiting for some questions to come in. So if you are watching and you have any burning questions, make sure you pop them into the Slido box on the Open Day webpage so that we can answer those now. Otherwise, we did also have a couple of questions early this morning asking about colleges. So does anyone want to talk about what their Oxford College is, what it's like, how they chose it, any sort of impressions on Oxford colleges? Charlotte, go ahead.
So I was probably in a similar situation to what a lot of people watching this will be in that I didn't have a visit of any Oxford colleges before I applied. That was just down to me being a bit silly, not down to a pandemic. But I think, to be honest, it didn't really matter, because as everyone will say, whichever college you end up at is your favorite college. Like, you can't really go wrong with the choice. Like, they all have so many pros and will have like one or two cons. So like, you can't really go wrong. So personally, I chose Mansfield College. The choice is made definitely easier for materials in that there are like 30 something colleges, but only 7 of them offer material science. So it makes it like not too daunting. Like, you can have a look at 7 websites. It's not too scary. I like had a look at the 7. I got rid of a couple because I was like, no, I kind of want to be somewhere that like looks a bit pretty. So that like got rid of maybe like Cats and Anns, even though they're still great colleges. And I didn't want to be somewhere that was too big. And I liked that Mansfield gives you accommodation for all 4 years. You don't have to be dealing with different landlords. They also give you kitchens if you live on site, which is quite nice if you want to cook and also sometimes be cooked for as well. I also think it looked nice. People there were really, really friendly. And so if you're choosing colleges, and have a look at like their social media pages. some of them are better than others, but you get like a more of a feel for like what the college is like, and like what kind of events they have going on there. But yeah, I think like the overall thing about colleges is you can't go wrong with your choice.
Yeah, definitely. With everyone that I've ever met, they've always said that their college is the best college and is their absolute favourite. So that is so true. Anthony, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, sure. I'm definitely going to pretend as if Charlotte didn't say cats isn't pretty, but we keep it moving. I think something that I sometimes hear as well when it comes to applications to colleges is that people feel that they can cheat the system. Like, if I apply to this college, I have a better chance of getting into Oxford if I go. And I could definitely confirm that that just doesn't work. There's no such thing as, if I apply to this college, I'm going to better my chances of working my way in. And that is genuinely something which I'd encourage you to make a college choice if you do decide to pick one, based on things like Charlotte said, the accommodation, the general vibe, what you can see from their social media pages, and Q&A sessions like this where you can ask different students what their experience is. So I went to St. Catherine's College, and one of the reasons why I picked it is it being like the largest undergraduate college at Oxford. So I've lived in London all my whole life, and sort of been used to being in a community which is like super busy all the time, large city and all of that. And I definitely wanted to bring that to my Oxford College experience, and I felt like Cats gave me that vibe of super busy, loads of people, meeting loads of people every day, and that was something that was quite important to me. Also, accommodation was something which I was really keen to a key part of my decision-making process of being accommodated for all 4 years. But yeah, no, it's definitely something which I can say that you can't cheat the system by trying to choose a college which will give you a better advantage. Do make a choice based on the vibe for you and what facilities you might want. So if your college is super near to your, if your college offers maybe a gym, maybe that could be important for you. If it has a music house, that could be important for you.
Yeah, it is incredibly personal, and it is completely down to you. So I think doing your own research and figuring out what your priorities are and which college that aligns best with is really key. But again, if you don't end up studying at that college, you might be reallocated to a different college. You'll still have a fantastic time and get a fantastic education. So even if it's not your top choice college, you'll still love it, I'm sure. Does anyone else want to add anything to colleges, or do you think we've got it all covered?
I would say I kind of think it's all covered, but I just to kind of show how personal the choices are, what Anthony was talking about, which is obviously completely true for him. But I chose Teddy Hall as my undergrad. I quite like the fact that it's got quite a big student population, but on quite a small site, which I quite enjoyed. I'm from like a small village, so I kind of wanted that slightly smaller vibe to the college, where everyone, because it's so small, everyone has to know each other. And I like that. And the fact that Teddy Hall didn't have accommodation for all 4 years, I thought was quite nice for me. I wanted to live out get a bit of experience in the real world, dealing with landlords and all of the estate agents and all of that. So I thought that was a benefit for me. Neither what Anthony or I have said is the right or wrong answer. It's just what the two of us wanted that was different, and that just shows that the choice of college is completely up to you.
Brilliant. So we've had a question come in, which is a really interesting question, actually. So Richie has asked, what exciting projects have the department worked on or are currently working on at the moment? So what really cool research is happening, Brad?
Well, we've only got 40 minutes left of the session, so I'm not sure we'll be able to cover everything. I would try and summarise by going with the kind of main fields that material science at Oxford is focused on. So aerospace is quite a big one. Nuclear energy. I guess expand that to other energy as well. There's some solar going on as well, and then batteries. Batteries research is also quite a big one. I'm doing some nuclear stuff, doing some materials research for nuclear fusion reactors, which are experimental and in the pipeline, will hopefully be a fantastic energy source in the future. So yeah, I think I would say nuclear fusion is a really exciting one that is a really big part of the department at the moment.
Awesome. So what exactly are you working on to get nuclear fusion happen?
I'm working on trying to design a new metal alloy that will enable the metal to work at higher temperatures and therefore enable nuclear fusion, which is currently producing power output, to actually convert that power into electricity so that it can be useful for the grid. That's what my research is on. And we have some really great connections with where we are. There's the UK, it's called the UK Atomic Energy Authority, the UK Centre for Nuclear Research is just down the road in Oxfordshire, and we have really good links with them and other universities that do nuclear research. So it's a really good centre to be researching nuclear at.
Awesome. So incredibly crucial stuff there. Charlotte, what do you think some really cool stuff going on?
So I'm only a week into my fourth year research project, but from like the little group, the research group that I'm in at the moment, some of the other people are looking at like lots of quantum computing stuff, and there is quite a lot of like computing that goes on of all different kinds, lots of which I don't really understand. But what I'm looking at is a lot of stuff with lasers trying to detect really small little particles that we currently can't actually see, but are probably causing some quite nasty illnesses. So it's almost like a slightly like with biological applications, which so just shows the breadth of research that goes on. And also just having so many different research groups that are filled with fourth year research students, other postgrad students, people who are doing their PhDs, but also people who have done their PhDs and are carrying on researching. So there's like so much research going on in the department. It's like almost overwhelming, and there's definitely, I don't know the exact numbers, but I feel like there are probably more researchers than undergrads in the department. Yeah, okay. So there's definitely lots of really cool stuff that gets churned out each year from the department.
Yeah, and I think Charlotte makes a good point there, that one of the really cool things is that if you study materials at Oxford, you will get to meet them and be a part of that research group in your fourth year, which is what Charlotte's just starting now. So I think that's really exciting. Anthony, do you want to chip in on what you think is some cool research work?
Yeah, no, I definitely feel like Brad gave that overview. And I guess maybe something else that, in addition, that is another research group at Oxford is the biomaterials group. So that's definitely something which they're looking at cool things, the applications of. So for example, there was a fourth year project, which I believe one of my friends was doing on like looking at tissue and I can't do it justice. I can't quite remember right now, but I know the biomaterials group is something that's of interest. Similarly, if you're interested in polymers, there's quite like strong polymer interest in the department too. So it's literally something for all of your interests. And I guess the department used to be like a metallurgy based department. So there's still that sort of coming through of like the metals processing, the alloys, sort of the manufacturing side of things too. So I definitely feel like there's a like world-leading researchers in sort of every area of material science. So if you do have the opportunity to come here, you will know that you're in literally like world-renowned researchers are leading your lectures or leading that research group or sort of like shifting the narrative within that sphere of research. So no, yeah, it's something that's really cool. And you definitely sort of get a flavor for that whilst you're here, that, wow, I'm really in the same room of this person who created this technique or this person who has just secured £12 million funding to continue his research. And it's like, wow. But yeah.
And they'll be your tutors. They'll be the ones teaching that you get to ask questions of every week. So yeah, that's really cool. Awesome. So thank you for that. So we've heard a lot about all the different broad areas of research that are happening in material science. So I guess that leads quite nicely on to talk about the sort of split between the different subjects that you study at undergraduate level. So we've heard the sort of like biology that pulls into it. There's obviously physics and maths, a bit of chemistry. So what's that sort of split in learning like at the undergraduate level? Is it mostly physics? Is it mostly chemistry? Anyone want to offer any insights into that? Yeah, Brad, go for it.
I think you've kind of covered it there, that there are a lot of different parts of different school subjects that will be brought in to a material science degree. And although we will have, like an example, electrochemistry is a lecture course. I can't remember which year it's in, second year, I think, maybe first year. You do an electrochemistry course, but in general, I think quite a lot of the courses, we don't have a course that's kind of called chemistry for materials or something like that. And I think it's something that's been mentioned on these before. Can't remember the name of the guy who mentioned it, but he always really likes to talk about thinking of materials as being the overlap of these things, and you stop thinking of physics and chemistry as being these separate, unrelated disciplines, and you start combining them, seeing how one affects the other and things like that. So we'll have courses about mechanical properties of materials, and you'll think about how the physics affects that, how the chemistry of the material might affect that. Same with corrosion as well, what happens when you start to, which is kind of electrochemistry, how materials start to corrode, but then when you start to add in some physics to that and you put some stress on the material and how those things interface with each other. So I think that's I think as much as we say we cover all of these different school subjects, they start to link up and overlap with each other and all those, and you stop seeing them as separate subjects.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really excellent point there. Does anyone else have anything to add for that? Charlotte, go for it.
Just a really small thing. I'd say the only time you do subjects separately is in first year. There are separate maths lectures, which are pretty handy. They basically just teach you the relevant parts of further maths. So it normally works out that, I don't know, I feel like maybe half of my friends who do materials have done further maths A level and half of them haven't. And it kind of just brings everyone up to the same level of maths by the end of your first year, where all of the relevant further maths stuff you've covered. So if you don't do further maths, it's not a stress at all. If you have, it means that one lecture course in first year becomes a little bit easier. Yeah, so that's just one thing about maths.
Brilliant. Anthony, did you want to add something as well?
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing as Charlotte, that the further maths idea, that sometimes people feel like if I don't do further maths, is that going to put me behind? It's definitely not the case. So for example, the example I use is, so I did further maths when I came I did at A level. One of my tutors, so one of my friends at St. Catherine's College, he didn't do further maths, but by the end of the first year maths course, I was asking him for help on the maths questions, because even though he didn't learn it in school, like it were all brought up to the same speed and we were all able to like move forward with the same level of maths knowledge. So definitely not to be worried about that. And also the point which Brad mentioned, like I definitely can't emphasize that enough too, the idea of in A level, you're used to seeing chemistry as its own distinct subject, physics as its own distinct subject. But then at uni, you now start to see the lateral links between these subjects. So you don't think of just chemistry in its own box, but how my chemistry knowledge has impacted my physics knowledge and how this all brings together all together. So definitely something which I would say is probably one of the biggest shifts from A level to university. The separate, no longer seeing these as separate subjects, but how they all fuse and link together.
Yeah, and I think that's the really cool thing about something like material science. It takes all these bits from so many different fields, even sort of business studies type elements and design technology and art and all those sort of things. It's really multidisciplinary, which I think is really cool. Awesome. So if anyone's watching, keep the questions coming in. We've still got time for some more. So to keep us going, so someone earlier today asked what the typical first year week looks like. So our tutors obviously replied saying there's sort of 2 or 3 lectures each morning and you'll have the tutorials. So my question is, what's it like to actually live through that? Sort of like, how do you cope with that high level of workload? Do you have time for other things as well? So does anyone want to offer any insight into what it's like living through this sort of vigorous timetable? Brad?
Yeah, I found first year pretty intense. I think what got to me most is this comes back to our college choice earlier as well, but I think this is probably the same for most colleges. First year, you're like living at college, which is pretty central to town, popping down the road for your lectures, coming back, you have your tutorials at college in the afternoon. And I found that really quite difficult to adapt to, kind of not having any separation. It kind of felt like you were living, at the time it felt like I was living at school pretty much, and not being able to leave. The good news is that it only lasts for 8 weeks, so you can just about power through the first term and get through it and get to the VAC and then try and reset a little bit. So it is hard work, but there's definitely time for plenty of other things. I say, even having done that, there's a lot of flexibility within the day after your morning lectures. you tend to have some flexibility around when tutes might be in the afternoon, depending on your tutor and their schedule and other student schedules and things like that. You might be able to move them around so you can do other things as well. Plenty of sport, music, drama stuff going on at the university level, at college level. So there's loads of different stuff to get involved in. And there's definitely plenty of time for that. I found that, it's can quite comfortably fit quite a lot of fun stuff around my materials degree as well. And I think that's really good as well. I think I'm not sure it's particularly healthy to be spending all of your time on materials. It's great, but I'm not sure it's that great to be consuming your whole life. So yeah, I think it's something to adapt to, and it's not easy to live it, but it's doable, and you can have a lot of fun doing it as well.
Yeah, really nice balanced answer there. I completely agree with everything that was said. Does anyone else want to add anything? Charlotte, go for it.
I guess the one big change from like school to university that like Brad definitely did talk about was that like at school you have to be there from like 9 till 3 or 9 till 4, and then maybe have a bit of homework afterwards, and like that's like all of your time. But at university, maybe less so with something like material science, but definitely more with other subjects, is that you have only a few hours actually scheduled each day, and the rest of the time you can work when you want and have fun when you want and sleep when you want. So there's I can't work past like 5 p.m. So I definitely try and keep my work like 9 to 5, and then like my brain switches off. But like you do have like the flexibility that if you're a night owl, then embrace it. So yeah, it's like a big change that you do have to like make your own routine, which you can use like to your advantage or to your disadvantage, to also try and fit around all of the fun stuff that's going on as well. But it also means like if you're just not feeling it one day, if you're having a day where you're just feeling a bit tired, you don't need to be physically like in the room with lots of other people, which is definitely quite nice. Definitely a big plus compared to school.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because obviously now at university you're living on your own. You sort of, you haven't got your parents or other family to take care of you, for example, if you're ill. But the nice thing about university is it does have that sort of flexible timetable, and you are adults. You can manage your time. If you have to take a day off because you're really, really sick with freshers flu, that's fine. You'll just have to, mix around your timetable and sort of make up the work maybe on the Saturday or something like that. And again, tutors are by and large very understanding about that as well, because, we're all adults, we all get sick, or we all have off days. So I think that's a really nice change from school to university as well. It's a lot more independent, and you have a lot more responsibility to manage your own time, which is really nice. Anything else to add on that?
Could I quickly add a couple of things here? So I definitely would say as well, to like really dispel that myth that you really do have time to entertain other activities. So I got involved in athletics in first year, and there was enough time to be able to train as well as still complete like my university work. And something that I also did as well, that I sort of said to myself that Friday evenings, no matter how much I have to do, would always be time off. And like speaking to friends, that was definitely something that, despite like the hectic schedules and workloads, all my friends, we all had like dedicated time in which we would just be like, you know what, whether it was a Sunday, you're not going to do anything, whether it was a Friday evening or something like that, we were all able to take that time off and still be able to keep up on top of the workload. So that is something which you might have heard the myths of Oxford just sort of runs you into the ground, but it's not true. And it is something which, with enough organization, you can still have that free time to not worry about work on whether it's a Sunday, Friday evening, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I did loads of extracurriculars as well. I was really into music and drama. And obviously when you've got rehearsals sort of every night at 7 or 8 o'clock, that's kind of my work cut-off time was then. So, and because I knew I'd have to be doing rehearsals, and you can fit that in. Same with, friends of mine did rowing, and that was sort of in the mornings, early mornings or late evenings as well. Other sports, other societies, you can fit in all the fun stuff. Great. So unless anyone has anything to add on that, I think we've got a couple of questions come in. So got a really good question here asking, what do you see as the career prospects for material scientists graduates? So obviously 2 of you have gone on to research. So that's one prospect. So I don't know, do we want to talk a little bit about that, and like other careers that you can go into from material science? Charlotte, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so I think it's probably been mentioned before, but from material science, it sort of roughly splits into three what people go into. So about a third of people stay doing research, things like what Brad and Anthony are doing. Do you feel staying in academia? About a third of people stay some in industry in some sort, become engineers, like in-house in lots of different companies, things like nuclear, aerospace, like some automotive industries, energy, that kind of stuff. And then about a third of people go into business, finance, stuff in the city, stuff that like a material science degree, especially because it's a Masters of Engineering degree, is like really like seen pretty highly in all these kinds of disciplines, but things that aren't necessarily completely related to material science. There are also people that go off and do random other things. I think I want to be a teacher, so that's like a little less common, but we still exist, yeah. So it's definitely you're not just limited to those three different career prospects.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of went down the sort of teaching route almost with my outreach work, which is sort of halfway between teaching and sort of university research. It's kind of like bridging that middle ground. So you can go into that sort of science communication and outreach side of things as well as teaching if the sort of sharing science knowledge is what you're interested in. I know people go off and work for BBC and become science news correspondents and that sort of thing. So lots of different paths. Brad, do you want to add to that as well?
Yeah, I think what Charlotte said's exactly right. I think that and what she touched on about people going into the city, and there's huge amounts of transferable skills that people use and some slightly old career paths. One of my friends from my year is working in visual effects for movie studios and things like that. So some really diverse things that people can go into. I also think it's worth mentioning. I'm not sure this might just be me. I had absolutely no idea about what academia was like before I started my degree. Absolutely had zero intentions of doing a PhD. As anyone who knew me as an undergrad would tell you, it seemed very unlikely that this is what I would end up doing. And the fact that that academia can be kind of a viable career path, doing PhDs is something with funding and I would have thought and still be the same. We get paid for, and that's not something that I realised. So it is something viable to stay in as well after the degree to carry on down that route.
Nice. Yeah, that is a really good point. I had no idea what academia even is. I didn't even know what scientific paper was before I started as an undergraduate, to be perfectly honest. So yeah, that's a really good point. Anthony, do you want to add to that as well?
Oh yeah, sure. And I guess wanted to add was that, again, like a lot of people, they sort of like begin their course not necessarily knowing what they want to end up in, which is completely okay. And it's just sort of saying that there is time over the course of the degree to sort of like pursue these different career paths. So like, I think in second year, I thought I was really interested in management consulting, sort of like the finance stuff. So I got involved in that. But then the summer of that year, I then did like a research placement in Germany for like 2 months. So it was like, again, an opportunity that I got access to via the material science department. The following year, they did this like insurance-based internship. And then like this summer, I've done like this entrepreneurship program with a startup. So it's like completely random different things, but opportunities that the degree has given me the opportunity to explore. And it's something which I'd highly encourage, to not just see the degree as the only thing you can do, but in your summer vacations as things to explore, whether that be work experience, internships, or just shadowing or things like that.
Yeah, that's really great. Well, that sounds like some amazing experiences that you've had each year there with so many different things. That's really nice and really illustrates all the different things that you can get involved in with something like material science. So awesome. Great. So we have another question from someone who says they're still hesitating choosing between sort of chemical engineering and material science. So they're interested in tackling topics such as the energy storage, net zero emissions challenge, sustainable energies, etc. So all the sort of climate change technologies, but they're not sure if it's best to approach from an advanced materials science point of view or more from a chemical engineering. So does anyone have any insights into that and sort of what the difference is between sort of engineering, chemical engineering and material science. Brad, do you want to? Oh, Charlotte.
Yeah, I think Charlotte's best to answer this one.
Okay, Charlotte, go ahead.
Oh, I don't know now. That's been hyped up a bit too much. So I think one thing to consider, this maybe isn't particular for chemical engineering, but maybe more for like engineering in general, is that sort of the biggest difference between material science and like and engineering would be like, for example, if you wanted to build a bridge, an engineer would be like, okay, what are the forces on the different parts of the bridge? What are we going to make it from? Oh, we'll make it from steel. Like that'll be fine. A material scientist will be like, okay, what are the forces on like the individual atoms? Like what are the forces that are going on at like, that like nanoscale? And then which particular steel, how much of each like alloying element will we need to make it the best steel for this application? So you're still looking at these same like mechanical electronic properties, but sort of at a whole different scale. And like material sciences still look at those applications, but just, yeah, it's all about like what scale you're looking at really. So I don't know a huge amount about chemical engineering, but I imagine it's sort of vaguely similar in that you might be like, oh, we'll use this chemical and not really question it and just look at the outcomes. But for material science, we'll more delve into that in more detail. I don't know if anyone else can add anything.
Yeah, Brad, do you want to add to that?
I think, I mean, definitely say material science because of the biases that are going on. But I'm not sure any of us have great in-depth knowledge of chemical engineering and what it entails. I can say from the bits of the question about kind of what you were interested in, that material science completely suits those things, right? Like like I said, I'm not in the best position to compare materials to chemical engineering, but materials definitely would fit the bill. I know it's a thing that people have done. I thought it was Charlotte. I might be getting mixed up. That people have applied for material science and chemical engineering within the same UCAS application.
I applied for like material science, natural science, and chemical physics.
Okay.
More just because I felt other material sciences course were a little bit too engineering focused and less sort of science focused. But I feel like material science at Oxford has decent elements of engineering and science. It doesn't focus too much on one or the other.
Yeah, that's definitely true. I think material science is one of those courses that will have slightly different names. You know, it might be materials engineering at other universities. And although these things are just the name of the course, they do have implications about what might be taught. It's worth having a look at the course. The Oxford courses, I would say, on the scale between engineering and science, is possibly closer to the scientific end, where you go. If you're talking kind of length scales, really, we go slightly lean towards the smaller length scales rather than the larger length scales of building a bridge, whereas other university courses might go the other way. So I'd say in that way, the Oxford course is possibly leaning towards maybe some more overlap with chemical engineering because we're going towards the scientific end. So it's worth looking at that and what different universities offer. And if you can, I would have thought this is probably something that universities will all put on their websites, the kind of courses that are studied in first year, things like that, and see first year, second year and beyond what those individual courses are. So what if you have that kind of knowledge, what you'll actually be learning. I think what's important to say there though is you're looking at, if you're looking at, you want to go into sustainable energy and things like that, there's no course in the materials in our degree that's called sustainable energy. Things like that, but all of the things that you learn can be applied in that way. And then when you get onto your fourth year project, you can start applying them in projects that are related to that field.
Yeah, some fantastic points raised there. Anthony, do you want to add to that as well?
Just a small contribution. So my older brother studied chemical engineering at university, and it's funny enough, when I was looking at it, I was a bit like, oh, I just don't want to do the same thing as him. So just like anything which is maybe close, but I just don't want to do the same thing as him. But from what I see, the impression I got from, fair enough, this was a few years ago, but I got an impression from him that in his course there was quite a like sort of progression of that course into like the petroleum industry and not necessarily sustainable energy, but like oil and gas and things like that, which is where he briefly went to working after his degree. So again, I can't speak for all chemical engineering courses, but that was the impression I got from him. I guess the ultimate point I was going to make though was that I think with a lot of these challenges, you're going to be working with interdisciplinary teams anyway. So whichever one you decide, I'm sure you're going to be in a team working with chemical engineers, with material scientists. And I think you're going to end up picking up skills from both when you're working on projects that work towards sort of like net zero emissions. So I'd probably argue that either way you go, do decide to pick, you're probably going to work with people from the course that you didn't end up picking and learning from them anyway, I'd say.
Yeah, that's a really important point. There's so many interdisciplinary collaborations in these sort of research fields. Once you get to that research level, that you will probably find a research group where someone's got a chemistry background, a physics background, a material science background, or an engineering background, and they're all working on the same thing and bringing their own specific set of skills to the problem that they're all trying to solve. So yeah, that's a really good point. And I think my bit of advice at the end of the day, if you're choosing between two different courses, whether it's material science and engineering or physics or anything, is do what Brad said and have a look at the course modules. And at the end of the day, choose one that you're going to enjoy the most, because you're going to have to sit there and study it for 3 or 4 years, possibly even longer if you do further degrees like a PhD or a DPhil. So pick what you're going to enjoy doing, because that's the most important thing at the end of the day. Charlotte, go for it.
I don't know how useful it would be when you're choosing between two quite similar subjects, because it is possible to write a personal statement that fits both. But one piece of advice I heard was that if you're picking between two subjects, then try writing a personal statement for each subject, and whichever one comes more naturally is probably the one that you should lean towards. I remember that was being told to someone that was choosing between like medicine and history. So like it's a little bit more would be a bit more obvious, but maybe that's something you could try. Yeah, it could help.
Yeah, that is a good point, actually. And certainly if you're choosing between something like material science and engineering and you're looking at the courses, you might find that because different universities offer different courses and different topics that are studied, you might find that what you love in the material science course at Oxford, you find in an engineering course at another university, and you kind of apply for both those courses, which is absolutely fine as well. And that's something that we understand when we're looking at people's applications. So that's something to bear in mind as well. Brad, do you want to add some more?
Yeah, I think it's just, as Charlotte talking about personal statements, I think it's almost a really powerful thing for your personal statement. A lot of people might write a personal statement materials talking about metals and things like that, which, is a pretty, very solid material science topic, whereas there's quite a lot of really interesting stuff going on at these interfaces between different departments, research areas, and writing a personal statement for materials where you talk about some materials aspects and how some chemical engineering maybe might impact that, and also potentially the other way around if you end up applying for chemical engineering and talking about the materials used in chemical engineering. That's a really nice and almost a unique take that you'll probably be writing your personal statement that will make you stand out and be something that you're personally really interested in writing about. So try and use that to your advantage, that you're interested in multiple things, and try and work out how they can relate to each other.
Yeah, I think that's some really good advice. While we're on the topic, does anyone else have any personal statement writing advice that they might want to share? Can anyone remember their own personal statements? Charlotte, do you want to?
Again, it was a piece of advice that I remember being given, but it was try and make it like a narrative, not like just disconnected paragraphs about like different things that you're interested in, but sort of talk about how one thing led you on to another thing, and has led you to where you are now applying. It makes it like nicer to read, and also like to organize your thoughts and make sure you've included everything that you've wanted to include.
Really great advice. Anthony, do you want to add something too?
No, yeah, I mean, following on that narrative point, it's definitely something which I found useful, because I remember quick side point, a lot of people feel like they have to mention, I read this book, and I guess Stuff Matters is a book which everyone mentions, which full disclaimer, I've never read. I don't think I've ever opened before, but even though the person who wrote it went to St. Catherine's College, but anyways, and there's another book like Why You Don't Fall Through a Floor, or like The Science of Strong Materials by J.E. Gordon, I believe, which sometimes people talk about. And I remember my personal statement, I was super into like podcasts and videos as opposed to reading physical books. So I just made reference to that. And I sort of had that narrative of like, watching this podcast led me to understand this materials technique, and this materials technique led me to do a summer school, and then this summer school I learned this sort of thing, and it was like a natural, you could see the trail of thought as to why I was interested in the subject from a lecture, where that lecture inspired me to go to a podcast, that podcast inspired me to apply to a summer school, what I learned at that summer school, and why I thought it would be relevant in the degree. So I think that was something that I found to be quite helpful, sort of like the narrative approach that Charlotte mentioned. And to not feel afraid to not talk about a book, because please don't mention a book that you haven't read, because your tutors will very, very easily find out, and it's just not good. It's not worth it. But if you are interested in videos instead, like by all means go down that route as I did.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because at the end of the day, I mean, it's a personal statement, isn't it? So make sure it's about what you personally are interested in. And like Anthony said, if you're not a big science book reader, like I wasn't, maybe short articles or books, podcasts, videos, even YouTube videos. There's so much online content these days, isn't there? So check that out, and yeah, show that narrative and that thought process and make it personal. Brad, did you want to add something more? Or did I
exactly what you just said, the personal, just to again make it the personal aspect. I definitely forced myself through reading a few books, which wasn't something that comes very naturally, reading a few hundred pages. But yeah, definitely, if that's what you're into, read some books. If not, if you want to watch some videos, want to podcasts, try and link it, like I said, link it to chemical engineering if you're interested in that, link it to a hobby you might be interested in. Make it as personal as you can, because it'll make it more interesting for the tutors to read, and they'll thank you for that. It'll make it easier for you to talk about if you're asked questions about it. All of those things just make it better.
Some fantastic advice here. Brilliant. So we've had another question come in, which I think is a really nice one that we might end up depending on how long the chat goes for. So someone has asked, what do you see about the materials science course at Oxford that makes it unique? So what's special about the Oxford course? Someone want to start off with that? Brad, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think the people that you're around are the biggest thing. We talk about the colleges, and as much as the colleges, Charlotte said she picked a pretty one, but I'm sure I would have thought the things she'll say she'll remember about it are the people that were there, the tutors that teach you, the people you end up working with in your fourth year who help you out a lot, because you really start your fourth year knowing absolutely nothing about how to do a research project. You find that out very quickly, and everyone that's around you that's super helpful. We're in a very lucky position that everyone here is pretty good at what they do, be it outreach managing, tutoring, research, all of those things. We're surrounded by people who are great at their jobs, and are all very, very willing to help you out. So that's I think that's a real strong point.
That is such a lovely answer. Thank you for that, Brad. Charlotte, what's your answer to that question?
It's definitely linked to what Brad said, but I feel like it's such a privilege to be able to live in Oxford. Like, I seriously think it's like one of the best places to live in the world. I mean, I've not lived in many places, but it's the perfect size. It's not too big, not too small. You can walk and cycle everywhere. There's so many green spaces, but also like a really nice shopping centre. You can do basically every extracurricular activity at basically whatever level you want. There are so many like opportunities here outside of like academics. I know the question was about like material science, but I think even if you move this course somewhere else, it would still be really special. But being able to do this course in this location, I think you can't beat it.
I mean, yeah, I'm definitely biased to agree, because I studied here as an undergraduate and then as a grad student, and now I work here, so I just haven't left. So I definitely second that opinion that Oxford is a fantastic place to live and work and study and meet the fantastic people who also live and study here. Anthony, do you want to add anything to that, or?
Oh yeah, I feel like what everything Charlotte, Brandon, and even Helen has said has been so true and so accurate. I guess in addition to like sort of plugging the fourth year, which I forever will do, I would probably say the tutorial system, because it's something which I speak to friends from other universities and sort of see like the opportunity to learn one-to-one, or like two of us in a group with a world-renowned tutor in their research is like, it's just unparalleled. And to be able to be so vulnerable, to be like, you know what, I just have no idea what this process is. And to have that explained multiple times, like having 2-3 tutorials a week over the course of a term, and being able to have that want to like that almost proximity that is like that other universities might not have the opportunity to provide, I think is really unique and something that adds to the experience and really makes you feel like, wow, I had a lecture. Like, I think a lot of people, they can leave a lecture feeling like, I have no idea what that technique or what that concept is, but they leave a tutorial feeling like, oh my gosh, I've just had this professor explain this to me over 45 minutes, over an hour, and it makes so much more sense now. And I think that really is something which makes you the experience unique too, in that you don't feel as though you know that you can always reach out to a tutor and have that 1 to 2 type conversation where you really learn and really like knuckle down on the concepts. So yeah, I would add that too.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. And again, something that is unique to Oxford. Charlotte, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, just to link onto that, like you really do feel really looked after. So like speaking to friends at other unis, they'll say, oh, like I have like a personal tutor that knows about me. But like I'm sure we could all say that even in your first year, there is just like there'd be so many academics that know your name and know you personally, which I feel like is just something you might not get at some other unis, which is really nice to be able to like bump into tutors in the corridor and to actually ask like, oh, how are you, like how was your weekend, I know this is your hobby, like how is that going, with not just one person but with quite a few of the staff here.
Yeah, absolutely. You do really get to know the tutors at that sort of personal level. I know we'd often have formal dinners in college and our tutors would be there and we'd all kind of sit together and just have a chat, you know, outside of that formal academic setting, which I think is really, really nice. And you get to see them as human beings, which is really nice. Awesome. Does anyone else have anything to add about the tutorial system at Oxford while we're mentioning it? Any other insights to share? Brad, go for it.
Yeah, I think going on just the access to people that you have, and as you said, being able to just ask them questions. It's all very well. A lot of people at a lot of universities will be very clever, very able to teach you, but the fact that we have this system where we get allocated hours a week in very low ratios with these people makes learning so much easier. Can really help. There are bits of the course that are really, really difficult, and different people will find different bits of the course really, really difficult. But having that opportunity to have it explained to you, it's not, you don't really have to be proactive about it at all. You have to be at the tutorial, and so you're there and you have the opportunity to ask questions, and they will answer them however stupid you think you're being, which is often quite stupid, you feel, sitting in those tutorials, but you come out having learned a lot.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Don't be afraid to ask stupid questions, because they're probably not that stupid. Yeah, that's something I definitely had to learn for myself. Right, I think we're pretty much near the end of our time now. So thank you all for answering these questions. Thank you all for watching and submitting your questions. I know we still have a couple of questions left, but if you guys are willing, I think we'll be able to hang around for a couple of minutes afterwards and type out a few answers to those ones that we didn't quite get to live. But still, thank you for joining us. Do any of you have any last little bits of advice or pearls of wisdom that you would like to leave us with? Charlotte?
I would just say, I've said it at the end of the other Q&As as well, but if you're in two minds about applying, like just apply. You've got 5 options. So using one of them, like on Oxford, isn't going to like ruin your chances of going to uni. It's a really great course, and yeah, the only way that you won't get an offer is by not applying. So just apply, see how it goes, and yeah, good luck to everyone.
Some fantastic advice to end with. So thank you all again for joining us. And like I say, we'll be answering a few more questions typed in the Slido. So if you have any last minute ones, please pop them in there. And otherwise, we'll say goodbye from us. So bye.